Comrades and friends, welcome to the program Global Weekly News, serial number 202, item number 1, May 12, National Demands Day, all TUs call. The platform of central trade unions and independent sectoral federations, associations calls upon trade unions in India to observe 12th May 2026 as National Demands Day in solidarity with the rising tide of workers' resistance in the country, particularly in the recent past in the northern and central part of India. The central trade unions condemn the brutal repression by the police in Uttar Pradesh and Haryana and the striking workers across Noida, Greater Noida, Manesar, Gurugram, Faridabad and some other areas in the national capital region. This is a direct assault on innocent workers and people with the state machinery acting openly in the interest of the corporates. The central trade unions call upon all workers, especially industrial workers, to observe a nationwide demands day on 12th May 2026, organizing campaigns at factory gates, industrial units and clusters in solidarity with the striking workers. Over the last 3 months, large parts of northern and central India have witnessed a militant upsurge of workers' resistance by the industrial workers against the inhuman exploitation of contractual industrial workers. This continues the momentum of the 12th February All India General Strike. The hurried low-wage revision by the state governments of Haryana and UP proves that only struggles yield results. Workers demand a minimum wage of Rs 26,000 per month. Contract workers constituted 42% of India's manufacturing workforce in 23-24. They earn Rs 10,000 to 12,000 rupees per month for 10 to 13 hour workdays with no double overtime, no weekly rest, no ESI, no PF, no bonus, no safety nor job security. Equal treatment with permanent workers is denied. The labor codes legalize exploitation by extending working hours and entrenching contractualization. The women workers are indiscriminately subjected to harassment of all sorts at workplace. Over 1,000 workers were arrested. Police have used raids, repression and surveillance to create a reign of terror. Many trade union leaders were put behind bars, while others have been placed under house arrest. The striking workers are branded as anti-nationals too. So the demands on Demands Day. There are 6 demands. First, immediate and unconditional release of all the arrested workers and activists. Withdrawal of all false cases. An end to repression and illegal detentions. Second demand, withdrawal of anti-worker labor codes, immediate tripartite talks with the trade unions, and urgent convening of Indian Labour Conference. Third, minimum wage of 26,000 rupees per month. Fourth demand, strict 8-hour working day, double overtime payment for extra work, ensured workplace safety, and other statutory benefits. 5. Equal wages and benefits for contract workers, abolition of the contract labor system in permanent jobs through regularization. And lastly, 6th demand, affordable liquefied petroleum gas and control over the prices of essential commodities. So let us, comrades, go for demonstrations in factory gates on May 12 in solidarity with the striking workers, and let us collect some money also towards a struggle fund. Thank you, comrades. Second item, now we go Karl Marx birth anniversary, May 5. British Broadcasting Corporation found through a survey who is the best intellectual in the last 1000 years. Karl Marx was the best intellectual. He was born on 5th May 1818 and died on 14th March 1883 at the age of 66 years. Karl Marx was a revolutionary philosopher, an economist, journalist, and organizer. He gave the answer for the vital questions like where does profit come from, how capital is formed. The real wealth creators are the working class. This class sells the only commodity it has, the labor power. For sustaining the labor power and to create further generations, future generations, the working class needs fulfillment of basic needs like food, shelter, cloth, recreation, health and education, etc. Part of the labor power value is consumed for this. Surplus labor power is exploited by the capitalists. Surplus labor power is the genesis of profit and capital formation. In a class-divided society, class struggle is inevitable. In Communist Manifesto of 1848, Karl Marx and Engels wrote, "The history of all hitherto existing society is the history of class struggles." Philosophers have so far interpreted the world in various ways. The point is how to change it. This is also one of the famous Karl Marx quotations. Modern workers are also slave laborers. They do not have job security, do not have adequate social security. Social justice has become questionable. The historic role of the working class is to unite with other basic toiling masses like the peasantry, the agricultural workers, etc., and to go for a social change by unleashing revolutions. Capitalism is in crisis. It has met with a deadlock. The only alternative for the humanity at the present juncture is the scientific socialism. How we will carry this message to the masses and prepare them for social change is real homage to Karl Marx. Let us see some of the famous quotations of Karl Marx. Revolutions are the locomotives of history. Second, our concern cannot simply be to modify private property, but to abolish it. Not to hush up class antagonisms, but to abolish classes. Not to improve the existing society, but to found a new one. Lastly, everyone who knows anything of history also knows that great social revolutions are impossible without the feminine ferment. Social progress may be measured precisely by the social position of the fair sex. Lastly, workers of the world unite. You have nothing to lose but your chains, and you have a world to win. Comrades and friends, third item, US attack on civilian cargo boats in the Strait of Hormuz. At least 5 Iranian civilians were killed when the US Navy targeted and bombed 2 civilian cargo boats traveling from Oman to Iran on 4th May. According to the Islamic Revolutionary Guards Corps, the boats were carrying civilian goods from Oman towards the coast of Iran when they were targeted by the US Navy. The IRGC characterized the attack on the civilian vessels as a result of US fear and desperation after it failed to implement the US President's so-called Project Freedom announced on 3rd May.
Hello, how are you?
Respond? Yes. Wait a minute. 2 pages. Responding to the death of civilians, Iran pledged that the Americans must definitely be held accountable for their crime in this regard. Iran also rejected the US claims of sinking several Iranian military boats as false. On 3rd May, Trump had announced that the US Navy will start escorting ships through the Strait of Hormuz from 4th May in defiance of the Iranian blockade since early March, claiming several countries had requested him to do so. He had called the move a humanitarian gesture. It was also reported that Iran fired warning shots at some of the cargo ships in the Persian Gulf after the US attack on its civilian cargo boats. Iran's foreign minister Abbas Araghchi reiterated on 5th May that there is no military solution to a political crisis. Meanwhile, Araghchi is traveling to China on 6th May as part of Iran's attempt to maintain broader diplomatic outreach with all its partners. He will meet his Chinese counterpart Wang Yi during the visit. Fourth item, comrades. Peasant March 27 days in Bolivia. Indigenous peoples and peasants marched for 27 days to La Paz, the Bolivian capital, to defend their land and rights. The people of Bolivia are protesting the 1720 law proposed by the right-wing government of Rodrigo Paz, which according to farmers threatens small landowners and farmers. The march began on 8th April, the day the law was passed. Item number 5, comrades. Flotilla, the global Summit Flotilla, activists imprisoned in Israel. Abu Qasim and Abila are among over 170 activists illegally intercepted and abducted at sea by Israeli forces on the night of April 29 to 30 as they sailed toward Gaza in an attempt to break the sea blockade imposed by the Israeli occupation forces. Since April 13, both activists have been on hunger strike in protest of their imprisonment and inhuman treatment. Over 30 flotilla participants transferred by Israel to Greece required medical attention for injuries. No formal charges have been filed against the two activists. Both remain in total isolation, subjected to 24/7 high-intensity lighting in their cells. Over 1 million children are suffering a genocide, being starved to death, being amputated without anesthesia. Item number 6, comrades. US declares end of Operation Epic Fury and Project Freedom. US President Trump announced that Operation Epic Fury, the military aggression launched against Iran on 28 February, will be at an end if Iran agrees to the terms proposed by his administration. In his Truth Social post on 6th May, Trump went on to threaten Iran with the resumption of war. If they don't agree, the bombing starts, and it will be deadly, sadly, at a much higher level and intensity than it was before. Trump had declared on 5th May that the US is halting the so-called Project Freedom. He claimed great progress has been made during the talks to end the war with Iran. The decision came merely 2 days after launching the plan for the US Navy to escort ships across the Strait of Hormuz. United States forces tried to break Iran's restrictions on 4th May, which led to small-scale clashes, with Iran firing on the US Navy and some other commercial ships, forcing them to abandon the attempted transit. In response, the United States attacked 2 small Iranian civilian boats, killing at least 5 people. Various media organizations reported on 6th May that the US has proposed a new one-page deal with Iran. The deal proposes Iran suspend its nuclear enrichment and both parties lift the restrictions on navigation in the Persian Gulf. The US proposes to lift all sanctions against Iran and release billions of dollars of Iranian assets frozen in foreign accounts in return. Iran is expected to reply to the proposal in the next 48 hours. Meanwhile, on 5th May, US Secretary of State Marco Rubio also declared the end of the military campaign. However, it is speculated that the declaration is merely the Trump administration's attempt to sidestep congressional authorization to continue any military hostility beyond 60 days. 5 minutes. Iran's foreign minister Abbas Araghchi met his Chinese counterpart Wang Yi on 6th May in Beijing. Wang Yi reiterated his country's position that the US-Israeli war on Iran was illegal and underlined the need for a comprehensive ceasefire. Wang Yi also reiterated the Chinese position on Iran's nuclear program, underlining its support for Iran's right to have a peaceful nuclear program. Lastly, comrades, not last but one. Item number 7. Trump imposes new sanctions against Cuba. The US government appears to be shifting its military attention towards Cuba as negotiations with Iran continue. US Secretary of State Marco Rubio visited South Commander on 5th May to discuss threats that undermine security, stability, and democracy in our hemisphere. On 1st May, while the Cuban people were preparing the iconic march to commemorate International Workers' Day, US President Donald Trump announced a new package of sanctions against Cuba. Washington announced that officials, entities, and individuals involved in Cuba's energy, defense, mining, and financial sectors would be sanctioned. Furthermore, the US administration announced that any foreign bank or company doing business with Cuban entities could be completely barred through the freezing of their assets from participating in US markets. Finally, Washington claimed that it will sanction any entity or individual complicit in acts of corruption or human rights violations, a vague measure that the US administration could use selectively to target specific entities. Cuba is currently undergoing a severe energy crisis that is impacting all sectors of society. Following the January 3 attack and imprisonment of Nicolas Maduro, Venezuela's president, and his wife, Celia Flores, the US banned the sale of Venezuelan oil to Cuba, and on 31st January threatened to sanction any country that sells crude oil to Cuba, which lies just 150 kilometers off the coast of Florida in US. These new attempts are deemed inhumane, a violation of human rights, and clearly imperialist in nature. Since the 1960s, Washington has imposed a series of economic and financial sanctions against Cuba, in addition to sponsoring armed invasions, CIA operations, and hundreds of failed attempts to assassinate the historic leader of the revolution, Fidel Castro. Trump has recently stated that he will take control of Cuba almost immediately. According to Trump, once the conflict with Iran is over, he could send the aircraft carrier USS Abraham Lincoln to the Caribbean, about 100 meters off the coast of Cuba. On 28 April, a group of Democratic senators in US tried to pass a resolution that would limit Trump's ability to launch a unilateral attack against Cuba, but the motion failed to secure the necessary votes. Cuban President Miguel Diaz-Canel said that Cuba will be able to defend itself against any aggression from Washington. Cuban Foreign Minister said that both the economic and energy blockades, the new extraterritorial coercive measures, the threat of military aggression, and the aggression itself are international crimes. Lastly, comrades, item number 8. Petro calls on Latin American people to defend Cuba. At an event in Bogota, the capital of Colombia, its president, Gustavo Petro, spoke about the latest US threats against Cuba and why the people of Latin America should defend Cuba, which has made tremendous achievements in arts, culture, science, and healthcare. He said, if we look at the COVID era that we all suffered through, the only country in Latin America and the Caribbean that was able to develop a vaccine when it was needed was Cuba. Cuba saved Cuban lives and the lives of Latin American people. Thank you, comrades. Lal Salam. See you next week.